Okay, so I want you to start by just picturing a computer, a standard setup.
Sure. Hard drive, processor, operating system.
Exactly. And if you lose the password or, you need to find some hidden file, there are technical ways to get in.
You can bypass the firewall, brute force the code.
We call it hacking.
Ah.
It's basically a logic puzzle.
Right. It's a system built on rules, so if you know the rules, you can manipulate them.
Precisely. Now, take that concept, that mechanical, logical approach, and apply it to the human mind.
Uh-huh.
Imagine if you could just crack the code of a person's consciousness, bypass their ego, hack their memory, and get, I don't know, admin control over their thoughts.
And that is the premise that has, well, it's obsessed intelligence agencies for decades. But as we're going to see today, the brain isn't a motherboard.
Not even close.
And when you try to hack it like a machine, you don't get this clean download of data. You get something much, much messier.
So today, we are diving deep into a fascinating and, frankly, a pretty unsettling set of documents. We're looking at excerpts from the redacted history files. Specifically, we're focusing on the CIA's MK Ultra program. Now, usually when people hear MK Ultra, they think conspiracy theories, general shadiness. But our source material today is very specific.
It is. It frames the entire operation as a literal attempt to, and this is the quote, hack the human mind.
That phrasing is what really drew me in. Hack the mind.
It suggests a certain arrogance, doesn't it? It implies the mind is just this piece of tech that the government felt entitled to reverse engineer.
And here's the thing that really anchors this deep dive for us. We aren't just talking about, anonymous test subjects or vague statistics.
No, this is different.
The redacted history files tie this program to a specific name, a name that I think most of you will recognize, but probably not in this context. We were talking about James Whitey Bulger.
The infamous Boston gangster.
The very same. But long before he was the kingpin of the Winter Hill Gang, he was a test subject in this exact program. And the timeline the source gives us is just staggering. 18 months.
That's the number that just leaps off the page.
Yes.
18 months.
So that's our mission today. We are going to unpack this file. We'll look at the official story versus the reality of it. We're going to look at what actually happened during those 18 months.
And we're going to ask what happens when you try to force a truth serum on a human brain.
And whether the result is truth or, as the file suggests, a path to madness.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with that official story. The files mention that, on paper, this whole operation was categorized under the search for a truth serum.
Right.
To me, that sounds like something out of a pulp detective novel.
It does, but you have to place it in the context of the time. I mean, the files reflect a Cold War mentality.
Okay.
There was this genuine fear and belief that the enemy had developed mind control techniques or brainwashing. So the CIA wasn't just looking for a way to make people talk.
They were looking for a counterweapon.
Exactly. A counter.
Okay, but truth serum still implies a certain reliability.
Yeah.
It implies there's like a chemical switch you can flip, and suddenly a person just can't lie.
Like Wonder Woman's lasso of truth, but in a syringe.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the popular idea. But looking at the source material here, it seems the agency's understanding of truth was just deeply flawed. They treated memory like a filing cabinet.
A filing cabinet.
Yeah, they thought if they could just pick the lock with the right drug, LSD, in this case, they could open the drawer and just read the files inside.
But memory doesn't work like that at all.
Not even a little bit. And the files hint at this failure. Memory is reconstructive.
Yeah.
Every single time you remember something, you are essentially rebuilding that memory from scratch.
Right.
So when you introduce powerful hallucinogens into that process, you aren't unlocking the memory, you're distorting the construction materials.
So you're not getting a clean read.
No.
You're getting a hallucination.
Precisely. And the source material notes that instead of a truth serum, the program became a path to madness. That distinction is vital.
How so?
A serum implies a clinical controlled extraction. Madness implies the complete collapse of the system you're trying to study.
It's interesting you use the word clinical because the files describe all this happening under the supervision of special services. That sounds very official. Very medical, even.
It's bureaucratic language. It's designed to sanitize the reality of what was happening.
Right.
Supervision suggests safety. It suggests that there are doctors there, ensuring the well-being of the patient. But reading between the lines of these files, that supervision wasn't for the subject's benefit.
It's for data collection.
It was for data collection.
Right.
They weren't watching to make sure he was okay. They were watching to see what would happen when he broke.
And this brings us to the subject himself, Whitey Bulger.
Yes.
Now, when most people think of Bulger, they think of the older guy the crime boss, the informant. But who was he when this experiment took place?
Well, according to the timeline in these files, this was the late 50s. He was in prison at the time.
He was a prisoner. That's a crucial power dynamic here.
Absolutely. He wasn't some volunteer walking in off the street. He was an inmate in the federal system. The files call him a famous gangster, but at that point, he was really just a petty criminal who'd been locked up.
He was disposable to them.
That's a stark way to put it, but yeah, it fits the profile. He was disposable to the state.
And the source really highlights the irony here. A man who would go on to become one of the most feared predators in the criminal underworld. He started out as the prey in a government experiment.
It really complicates the narrative we have of him. Usually with gangsters, we talk about their choices, their violence, their agency.
Right.
But here, his agency was completely stripped away. The redacted history files describe him as a subject to be acted upon. The state was the aggressor.
And the criminal was the victim.
In this specific context, yes.
And the weapon they used wasn't a gun or a baton, it was chemistry. Let's drill down into the method, because this is where the source material gets truly dark.
It really does.
We mentioned the duration earlier, 18 months.
It's a number that is just so hard to wrap your head around in this context.
I mean, think about 18 months of your life. That's enough time to get a master's degree. A baby learns to walk and talk in that time. It's a massive chunk of your existence.
And the source says he endured 18 months of hallucinations.
Just pause on that for a second.
Yeah.
18 months of hallucinations. This isn't a one-off bad trick.
No, this is a chronic, sustained alteration of reality. You have to consider the neurological toll of that.
I can't even imagine.
LSD and drugs like it work by disrupting serotonin receptors in the brain. They create this flood of sensory information. They dissolve the boundaries of the self. To experience that repeatedly for a year and a half, the brain just has no time to reset.
No time to ground itself.
No time to ground itself in any kind of reality.
And he's doing this in prison. It's not like he's in some comfortable therapy room with soft music playing.
No, and that environmental factor is huge. If you look at the concept of set and setting in psychedelic research.
Set being your mindset.
Yeah.
Setting is your environment.
Exactly. A prison is arguably the worst possible setting. You are already in a high-stress, low-control environment. You add powerful hallucinogens to that, and you are essentially manufacturing a nightmare.
A custom-built nightmare. And the source mentions he was under the supervision of special services this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I keep coming back to that. Imagine being in that state walls, melting, paranoia spiking, reality just dissolving, and the only people you can look to for help are the men with clipboards who are doing this to you.
It creates a feedback loop of distrust. In a normal therapeutic setting, the doctor is the anchor to reality. Here, the doctors, or the intelligence agents, they were the architects of the delusion.
Wow.
The source says this influenced his psyche, which I think is a massive understatement.
Influence his psyche. Yeah, that's such a polite clinical phrase for what must have been absolute psychological torture.
It is, but let's try to unpack what influenced might actually mean here. The goal of the program, remember, was to hack the mind, to break down defenses. So if you spend 18 months having your reality dismantled by authority figures, what does that teach you about the world?
It teaches you that reality is malleable, and that authority isn't there to protect you. It's there to manipulate you.
Exactly. It validates the absolute worst kinds of paranoia. We often describe Whitey Bulger's later behavior as paranoid, violent, hypervigilant.
Yeah.
Well, if you spend 18 months being gaslit by the federal government on a chemical level, is it paranoia? Or is it a learned response?
So that's the hacking part. Right. They were trying to hack in to get information.
But they ended up rewriting the operating system.
That's a perfect way to frame it. They weren't just reading the data, they were corrupting the code. The files say this became a path to madness.
Right, which suggests a progression. It wasn't instant. It was a slow, degrading journey where the subject, Bulger, was walked further and further away from sanity.
Do you think they knew what they were doing? I mean, did the special services guys realize they weren't finding a truth serum, but were just breaking a human being?
The source seems to imply that the goal shifted. Or maybe it was never really about truth in some, altruistic sense.
What do you mean?
If you can't get the truth, maybe the next best thing is control. Or maybe they were just documenting the blast radius.
The blast radius?
Yeah. What happens to a human mind when we push it this far? That's not an interrogation. That's a stress test.
A stress test on a human soul. And the result, according to these files, was a madness. that Bulger then carried with him.
We have to be careful, of course. We can't say MK Ultra caused every crime Whitey Bulger ever committed.
That's too simple.
It's way too simple, but the source forces us to acknowledge that this man's psyche was profoundly tampered with by the state. You can't separate the man he became from the experiment he was forced to endure.
It just blurs the line between the criminal and the creation.
It does. It reminds me of that old saying, hurt people hurt people. In this case, it's a very specific kind of trauma. People whose minds were systematically deconstructed by the CIA hurt people.
Let's pivot back to that core concept of hacking. The source introduced this whole deep dive with that idea.
Right.
The CIA wanted a shortcut. They didn't want to do the hard work of traditional intelligence gathering. They wanted a cheat code.
And that desire for a cheat code is really the danger here, isn't it? It represents a fundamental lack of respect for the complexity of the human mind.
It's the hubris of technology applied to biology.
That's it, exactly. A computer, if you hack it, it does what you tell it to do. A human mind, if you try to hack it with trauma and drugs, it doesn't just obey, it fractures.
It fights back.
It fights back, it confabulates, it creates new, terrifying realities to protect itself.
The redacted history files really highlight that massive gap between their expectation and the reality. Expectation. A docile subject spilling secrets.
Reality, a hardened criminal undergoing a psychotic break over the course of 18 months.
And then eventually being released back into the world. That's the part the files allude to, the aftermath.
They didn't keep him forever. They broke him, and then they let him go.
That's the truly scary part for society, isn't it?
Yeah.
You take a man, you put him on a path to madness, and then you just open the prison gates.
It raises a huge question about responsibility. If you manufacture madness in a lab, are you responsible for what that madness does when it gets out?
And the files don't answer that.
No, but they certainly make us ask it.
It's a heavy realization.
Mm.
You know, we look back at history and we see good guys and bad guys. But this file shows the good guys, the government, the intelligence agencies, doing things that are objectively horrific to the bad guys.
And in the process, maybe making them worse, it strips away that moral binary.
Yeah.
It shows that in the pursuit of truth or security, the state was willing to engage in psychological mutilation. And the ultimate irony, as we keep coming back to, is that it didn't even work.
They didn't get their truth serum.
They just got a legacy of damage.
A legacy of damage and a cautionary tale about the limits of control. You can't force entry into the human mind without destroying the very thing you're trying to understand.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the redacted history files, we're left with this image of the 18-month nightmare.
The CIA, MK Ultra, Whitey Bulger, a failed hack.
A failed hack with truly catastrophic consequences. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought to mull over. We live in an era where we're all obsessed with optimizing our brains.
Biohacking.
Right. We want to learn faster, focus better, sleep deeper. We treat our minds like software to be upgraded.
But we should remember that the mind isn't software. It's organic, it's fragile, and it's defensive.
Exactly. And if the most powerful intelligence agency on Earth, with unlimited resources, tried to hack a mind and only succeeded in creating madness, well, maybe there are some firewalls that just aren't meant to be breached.
And maybe the search for a shortcut to the truth is the most dangerous path of all.
Something to think about. Thanks for exploring the redacted files with us today.
Keep questioning the official story.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.